Mic check, 2 J's hit the stage like thunder. Friendship, solid rock, no cracks, no blunders. Navigating life round the kids and the hustle. 30s hit hard, but we flex in the muscle. 2 J's in a pod where the truth gets spilled. Real talk kings, every vibe gets fulfilled. Dads by day, on the mic we just kill. Friendship eternal, we keep it too real. Jason got the sagas, Johnny rolling with the truth. Convos hit deeper than the roots of our youth. Bar for bar, it's a therapy sesh we supply. Navigators of the vibe, no cap, no lie. Topics ain't safe, from diapers to dilemmas. Dealing with drama or revisiting tremors. Podcasts, waves hit sharp, slice like katana. Real dads, real men, hotter than a sauna. A journey of milestones, we live and we laugh. 2 J's, 2 mics, no scripts, no drafts. From midnight feeds to battles.
All right, guys, we're back here. 2 J's in a pod. We have Johnny out. He has some personal stuff going on, but I do have my friend here, Lehi Dominguez. He's a fighter. He's a military man, a father, just overall a badass dude. Welcome to the show, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So yeah, I just wanted to have you on and kind of share your story. We've had a lot of conversations. The way we met was through the business. So like I said, Lehi is a fighter, and we sponsored him for his mouth guards for a few fights, right? So just wanted to talk. Did you originally grow up in Utah?
No, I'm originally from New Mexico.
New Mexico?
Yeah, really, really small town.
Really?
I didn't get here to Utah till 2009. So
Okay.
yeah, I was active duty Navy for 5 years, and then actually, it's a funny story. A girl brought me out here,
Oh, really?
and then we ended up breaking up like a month later.
Oh, and you just stayed.
So yeah, I just stayed.
Cool. That's cool. So at what age did you come out here?
That was 2009. It's been a hot minute, right?
Oh,
So that's
okay.
10 years, 40, so probably around 24.
So you were an adult and everything?
Yeah.
How was growing up in New Mexico, you said?
New Mexico, yeah. No, it was. I grew up in a really, really small town. So Deming, New Mexico. Most people, they're not gonna know Deming, but most people know Las Cruces. So that's the big
Right.
city near us. But it's just a small farm town. You can literally walk from one side of the town to the other in like 10 minutes.
And then, so you went to school there and everything, and then you joined the military, I'm assuming?
Yeah. So my dad relocated us to Phoenix, Arizona, my senior year, and at that point, really didn't have anything going. I was about to drop out, honestly. So wasn't making any friends over there. Me and my dad, we didn't have the best relationship back then. So I was ready to drop out, but it was crazy. We had a recruiter come to our school, and I mean, I became a recruiter years later, but yeah, gave us their spill, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew I wasn't going to go to college because wasn't putting much effort into school. But after I spoke with him, I went to the mall, ran into him there, and I was like, "Hey, what do I need to do to join?" And well, you need a diploma. So that's actually military saved me. I went back to school, got all my credits done, got all caught up in about a month. And 2 weeks after I graduated, I went to basic.
Cool. Get a little closer to the mic
Okay.
so everybody can hear you. All right, so then you joined the military, and what was like your first experience, like going to the military and all that?
No, I really didn't know what to expect. I guess like years down the road, getting to know more of my extended family. I had an uncle that served in the Navy for 20 years, and then a lot of cousins, things like that, that also served. One of my aunts served in the Marines, but I didn't know about any of that till like years later. But no, joining, I had no idea what to expect. But yeah, it was easiest way to put it. It felt like I was getting thrown to the wolves, you know.
Yeah, especially that young. And I mean, yeah, I know people that have joined the military, and it's quite an experience, but I think there's a lot of lessons in that too, right? Like
Oh yeah.
facing those difficult things. Like obviously going into the military at a young age is definitely going to be challenging because you're trying to figure out your life,
Yeah.
right? And so that's really cool. And so now you're still in the military.
Hmm.
You said you moved out to Utah for a girl,
Yeah.
ended up staying here. At what point did you start? I guess what got you into MMA?
So I came out here. I started going to school, and it was kind of an interesting story. So went to UVU, and whenever I went to go see the counselors, they're like, "Well, hey, you're gonna have to pay out of state tuition." And I was like, I thought my GI Bill covered 100%. They're like, "Yeah, if you're a resident." So I ended up finding the National Guard, Army National Guard, and went and talked to them, and didn't trust recruiters at that point because my Navy recruiter had lied to me like crazy. But long story short, I was like, "Hey, what do you guys do for like tuition, or like how does it work if I join?" He's like, "Yeah, you become a resident automatic." And I was like, "Okay, that's all I need to hear." So
Mhm.
joined the army, went to boot camp again, came back, and then I think it was like my first or second drill. So drill is like you have 1 week in a month.
Okay.
Uh, so it's like 2 or 3 days that you go, you work with your unit, and they were doing combatives. And back in the Navy, I watched like this was UFC when you could only if you didn't watch it live, you had to wait till DVD, right?
Right. Yeah. And buy the
So
DVDs.
yeah,
Old school.
so yeah, but we would always watch the DVDs in the barracks whenever I was in the Navy. So I big fan. I fell in love with MMA from watching that. Wanted to do boxing growing up, so that was always a thing for me as well. But yeah, first combatives, I had never trained at all. Just watched like the UFC
Right.
fights, and ended up like I was just tapping out guys left and right. So um, one of my sergeants at the time, he trained at the original pit. It was in Orem at the time,
Yeah.
and he was training there. He's like, "Hey, you should come check it out." So walked in. I did one class jujitsu with the ex UFC fighter Brock Jardine, and that was it. I was hooked.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. So just to backtrack a little bit, when you were out of high school, you joined the Navy,
yeah,
and then eventually you get out of the Navy.
yeah. I got out of the Navy for a year, so I was in they call it the individual ready reserve. So all they did is they call you like once a year, make
Okay.
sure that see where you're living, but you're not considered active. Like they can't call you back. So when you sign up for the military, any branch, you do 8 years. It's a mandatory service obligation. So I had completed 5. And whenever I moved to Utah, I still had 2 years left on my original contract. So I just turned that into a National Guard contract.
Oh, okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool. That makes sense. I feel like I have a lot of respect for people that like join the military. I never did, and like obviously recruiters would always like try to reach out, and in high school and
Oh, yeah.
stuff, they always try to get you. But it was something that I was like, no, I'm okay. Plus, I was getting in trouble and doing other stuff that I was preoccupied with. But I think like as I get older, I'm like, man, like when I talk to people like you or other people that have had those experiences, I think like I'm sure there's positives and negatives to those experiences, but ultimately, I think in life, like facing difficult things really makes you stronger, makes you grow, puts you in this position to almost like fast track yourself to growth and learning. Right? Do you
Right.
feel like the military did that for you?
Oh yeah. No, when I joined, I was very immature, and I had a lot of anger issues, things like that from growing up. So the military is one of those things where they teach you discipline. That's one of the first things they instill within you at basic training, and so that gave me a solid foundation and gave me the direction that I needed at that point in my life. Because really, like I said, I look at the things I was doing in high school, like you said, getting in trouble, and I was like, yeah, I probably would have ended up locked up, or who knows what else.
Yeah, being like a hothead teenager with all that testosterone, at
Oh
least
yeah,
like the military gave you somewhere to put that, right?
right.
Um, what do you think, as far as your experience with the military, was like your biggest challenge?
Honestly, the biggest challenge was just myself, because like I said, me and my father, our relationship was really contentious, and so I grew up with a lot of anger, and going into the military where there's that rank, that structure, whatever they say, you have to do. So I was constantly getting in trouble because I had issues with authority, if you will,
Right.
and so really just I guess just trying to find my way in the military because really back then, if I didn't agree with you, I wanted to fight you, right?
Right.
And so in the military, obviously, if you fight, you get in trouble. So oh man, I was in trouble all the time, getting ridden up just because talking back to your superiors, whatever else it was. So really, for me, the biggest challenge was just overcoming my own personal demons, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest lesson in life is, we look at life like outwardly, right? All these things happen to us. This person did this or this experience happened.
Right.
But the biggest lesson that I feel like I'm learning throughout life is that it's all up here. Things happen. It's your perception of these things that are happening. And that's like the biggest battle because you could be in a situation where, let's say, you live in a 1-bedroom apartment and you don't have a car, right? You have to take the bus.
Right.
You might look at that and be like, oh, that would be a difficult situation. The guy living under the bridge is dreaming for that apartment. You know what I mean?
Right.
So he's working. So life is just like a perception and perceiving these things that happen to us. And if you can control your mind and see life and show gratitude for everything that you have, I think like it just shifts and changes everything from like a lack of like, oh, I don't have this, I don't have that, to like, look at this amazing life I have regardless of what's happening.
Absolutely. No, and yeah, just looking back over the course of my life, I think especially at that age, it was more, I was just searching for a sense of direction. I think at that time, the military was just a means to an end, and wanting to show my dad that, hey, I can do things on my own without you. I don't need my parents' money. I'm going to find my own way. But that gets old after a while. Just trying to prove yourself all the time, and after my initial contract ended and I started going to college, and that was probably around 23, 24, whenever I started going to college. I think that's whenever I really started opening my eyes and being like, okay, what do I want to do with my life for real? Like at that point, I wasn't going to come back in. I was done with the military. I hated my active duty experience. So it was like, all right, well, you've always thought about law enforcement. So went to UVU, got my degree in criminal justice.
Nice.
And then once I graduated, that was around the time so I graduated in 2016. And that was around the time that, cops were getting shot. There was a lot of hatred towards cops, things like that. And so I was just like, well, probably already got enough PTSD from the military. I don't need anything more from law enforcement. So I was blessed to get a active duty position within the National Guard. And so I was like, I think at that point, once I graduated college, I had over 10 years in. So I was like, hey, might as well make this a career. I've been doing this long enough. So 20 years, you get your military retirement.
Right.
I'm at 21 years. So, for me, it's all looking back, I always say that joining the military was the smartest thing that the younger me ever did.
Yeah. And I agree with that. Like like I said, it's difficult, right? At 18 or just a teenager joining the military and but you've put in so much time, and I know the military takes care of you. Like once you get to that point, like you're pretty set, right?
Yeah.
You're in a good position versus if you would have just got a 9-to-5 out of high school,
Right.
you'd probably still be doing something similar, right?
Right.
You talk a lot about your relationship with your dad. Was your mom in the picture, and how was your relationship?
No, my mom definitely was in the picture. And, my mother, she was a big reason. She was like a big why for me. She was that purpose because, they're still together, thank God. But she was really like my support system back then because, like I said, with my anger issues, I was always pushing people away. I was getting in trouble. And she was the only one that really stuck by my side, growing up. So shout out, Mom. Love you.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I feel like my relationship with my parents is very similar to where my dad was like the tough one. He didn't show any emotions. It was always like old school, you got to be tough and suppress everything. And then my mom was always, no matter what trouble I got into, no matter what issues I was having, she was always there, always supported me, So I feel like I can relate to what you're saying with your relationship with your parents. What's your nationality?
So I'm Mexican American.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
First generation?
First generation.
Okay, cool. That's cool. So you said, you came here, you did some combat training, or what was it? What did you call it?
So
when you started training MMA?
yeah, so in the Army they call it combatives, training.
Okay.
So really, that's training. So if you go overseas, uh, you know how to defend yourself against like enemy combatants. But if you
Like
analyze
hand to
it,
hand combat
yeah,
type of
hand to
stuff.
hand. If you analyze it to like a jujitsu, I would say it's like your basic white belt, you know, moves. Like they would teach you rear naked chokes, how to defend the guillotine, things like that. So it was all very like basic level jujitsu, if you will. And you can go up to like combatives level 3. I was never able to go to any of those trainings, but you know, I trained against a lot of guys that were level 3 combatives at the time. And like I said, I was tapping guys out whenever I had barely got into MMA for like a year, 2 years.
Yeah.
So I was like, I think I'm doing pretty well for myself.
Right. Do you think like the military training versus, let's say, the pit when you were going there, do you think there's different levels to it? Because obviously the guys at the pit, professional fighters, they do that every day and that's their life, right? In the military, that's part of it, but there's also a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah, I think with that, just because combatives is it's more geared towards, you know, defending yourself against like combatants. It's not really the same.
Right.
Like,
versus trying to win an MMA fight.
oh yeah, training with the guys at the pit when I first started there. That was whenever everybody in Utah was rocking it. I mean, Court McGee was in his early UFC career. Ramsey Nijem was in the UFC. Steve Seiler, Brock was in the UFC at the time.
Oh, the OG guys.
Yeah, you had Josh Berkman. I think not sure where he was fighting at that time. And then we had Jason South, another OG. So the pit was just like full of killers, and I was just this green amateur getting my butt whooped at practice all the time.
I have a question. How many tap out shirts did you have at the time?
I actually never opened.
No?
I never owned any tap out. No, never got into that. Yeah,
That's a shame. That's cool though. So you start training at the pit. How long into that do you take your first fight?
Oh yeah, no, and I've shared this on other podcasts, but so Jason Merlick was the head coach at the pit at the time. So for them, it was always about representing for the brand, right, or for the team. So their rule was you had to train a year straight before you could like take a fight and have the pit, you know, to
like in your corner and all that. Right?
have the pit. So yeah, it was a year. I trained a year straight of Muay Thai, wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Tandy Sutter, she was my old Muay Thai coach, but she's moved on to like Idaho now, has her own family. And then Brock's long retired. So those were my original coaches. And then Arnold Anderton, he still helps at 4-7 with Jason over there. But yeah, those were my original coaches back in the day.
So tell me your experience like on your first fight. I've never had a fight, right? Like I did some boxing and stuff, but I never like took an actual fight. I'm sure the nerves and everything, like what is your like thought process and where's your mindset? Obviously you've done this for a year and you feel comfortable, but doing it in the gym is different than like going out in front of a crowd. And you know, you have all these like different possibilities of like injuries and getting knocked out and all these things. So where, like, I guess, where's your mind at? What did you do to get yourself ready for this first experience?
I mean, just the training. I think honestly, and being honest, like I was the most dedicated back then because I lived in the gym. I was there every day, 2-3 hours a day, you know, just working. But no, once I really don't think there's anything that can prepare you for that first fight.
Right.
Like I went in and then I think I've talked to other fighters. They've experienced similar. It's really, you just get tunnel vision. And so really like even all your training that you've done kind of goes out the window. So my first fight just ended up turning into a brawl. Like I think I threw like over 100 punches in that fight. Like we were just swinging at each other. Yeah, rock 'em, sock 'em. And I remember it was probably after like the first, second round, I was getting gassed.
Yeah.
And so at first I just gave the guy my neck because I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm good. And then one of my teammates at the time, he gave me the best advice I ever had. He was like, hey, you know, win or lose, no matter what you do, he's like, do not quit. Do not give up. He's like, you will regret that for like the rest of your life. So I remember just like being tired. This guy has my neck. He's locking up the guillotine. And I just remembered what my teammate told me. And I was just like, you know what? Heck no. I was like, I'm not doing this. So luckily, I think there was short time, and then went into the second or third round and got my second wind, took the guy down, and I just started wailing on him and got the TKO finish.
Nice, dude.
Yeah.
I think that in life too, we go through these things, different experiences, and like these difficult experiences. For example, you know, in a fight, being choked out, in the moment, that's all you can think about. But if you can push through that, you know, you're not going to be in that situation again. Sure, maybe with somebody else, right? But you're not going to be in that same fight getting choked out. So it's like if you could just tough it out for like a few more seconds, and like you said, got your second win, and so you push through that, got your second win, and ended up winning that fight, which is just like that perseverance and pushing through those difficult times.
Yeah.
And so after that, you have several fights. When was the last time you fought?
So I fought last year for BKFC. They came here in September. So didn't get the win. It was only like 30 seconds. He got a good uppercut, but like he also poked my eye at the same time. And a lot of people didn't see that, but I went to the back, like I had a scratched retina. My eye didn't open up for like 2 weeks. So, and then before that, it was a year break because my last MMA fight, I broke my foot. It was like, that was probably the biggest injury I had in any kind of fight.
So the crazy thing about that is I was watching that fight and I seen that happen. And in 2020, so 5 years ago, I broke my ankle on a hike like the same way. My foot was just dangling.
Okay.
And I seen the same thing with yours. And I was like, oh, like when I experienced that, that's why I got the tattoo that I have where it says you versus you, because I feel like for me, it was like such a mental battle. Cause I went from being in and out of the house, working, doing all these things. And at the time I was living alone. So I was home alone, just watching Netflix for like, it ended up being like 3 or 4 months of just like trying to get through every day. Obviously there's pain, there's discomfort. You know, I had 2 surgeries. I don't know how your experience was with that, but I had 2 surgeries. And so it was such a mental struggle to just sit at home and not be able to do anything. So depressing. Do you feel like, can you tell me your experience of when you broke your ankle and how that was?
No, I mean, very, very similar. So it was funny because after the fight, you know, I'm in the back, the medics, they're like trying to keep me down. And I'm all telling them, I'm like, hey, how long is this going to take? I was like, I want to go to the after party. Like, I want to go celebrate. And they're like, dude, you're not going anywhere. Like, look at your foot. And then I couldn't even pick it up, but I was looking at it and it was just like dangling. And I was just like, oh crap, I'm going to the ER, right? And so like, let's see, that was 2 years ago. So I was 38. So at 38, I've never had any kind of injuries like that. Never been to the ER. Might have gotten a couple stitches, but yeah. So I didn't really have any pain or anything like that. It was just like you said. So for me, it was my right foot, and very, very similar. You know, I was off work. You know, my wife was working at the time, and just every single day, like down in the basement, same thing, watching Netflix. And that was actually my second time battling depression because you never really like, I guess you never really take the time to appreciate those small things, like something even as small as walking and,
Dude, same,
you know, being on this little scooter. Like I couldn't go up and down the stairs. So literally like, my wife, thankfully, we were living with my mother-in-law at the time. So, you know, she was helping bring me down food, but you know, I couldn't do anything for myself. And that was, you know, and I've been through a lot of hard times in my life, but that was definitely one of the most challenging. And just all that time alone, you know, especially waiting for my wife to come home. And I don't think, my baby daughter wasn't born at the time. And I share custody with my daughter. So there was days where I'm just down there by myself and I'm just like miserable, can't work out, can't do anything. And so, for the mental, I definitely agree. You know, I've dealt with depression before, but I was definitely in a dark place. You know, I didn't have a lot of people reach out. So I just thought like, hey, nobody cares. You know, it's just me and my wife. Like I'm all alone. And yeah, it was tough. took a lot for me to get out of that dark place.
Yeah, like I feel like I got the same message from my experience, right? Like even me getting in the shower, I had to wrap up my leg, and
Yeah.
like getting in the tub was a struggle. And so you don't realize how good you have it that you could just get up and go take a shower
Right.
or go up and make yourself a plate of food. Cause
Yeah.
I was on the scooter too. And so luckily, like I had my brothers coming and they would bring me food and they would kind of come and hang out and like having somebody to talk to. But other than that, man, it was tough. It was like a really dark time just
Yeah.
kind of sitting there with your thoughts. And for me, the way I feel like made it a little bit easier was kind of just focusing on that particular day. Because if I looked at the road to recovery, right, which was 3 to 4 months from what the doctor told me after my surgery, I feel like it would make me go crazy looking at that long road ahead of where I'm going to be stuck in bed, right? So for me, I'd wake up in the morning and I would just try to get through the day and be able to go to sleep that night and then do the same thing over and over and not focus on like the long road ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, did you have a second surgery?
No, it was actually pretty crazy. I believe I was in the boot for about 2 months straight. And then after the boot came off, they did the x-ray and they're like, hey, like everything looks really good. Or the cast, I had a cast on. They're like, yeah, everything looks really good. So when the cast came off, like that was it. They put me in a boot. And, I guess from being stir crazy, they're like, hey, take it easy. He's like, you're an athlete. So, he's like, your recovery time is probably a little bit faster, but I think like 5 days later, I was walking on my own and just got rid of the boot altogether.
Yeah. Did you feel, for me, when I took the boot off finally, I felt like my ankle was going to roll like every step that I took just because all the muscles and everything were so weak, right?
Yeah.
Of not walking. Did you feel something similar, like learning how to walk again?
No, not really. The walking process was pretty easy. I can't remember whenever I go back in the gym, but I think I was probably in the gym a month or two later.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I just got back to it. I was just like, hey, feels good, and I had to trust myself. Like I had a fracture early on in my career, and so I think having that, it was a clean fracture. So, getting back into the gym after that, you just kind of learn how to trust your body. And so this time around, I was just like, hey, the pins look good. The doctor says I'm good. It feels good. So, yeah, I try to get back to it as quick as possible. But I haven't had any issues since then.
You don't feel any pain or anything?
No, not really.
Yeah, me neither. People ask me about that, and I just ran a half marathon, and I'm like, my foot that's actually not broken, which I broke my right one, right? So my left one sometimes bothers me, but the right one's solid. I feel like it's even better than before. Yeah. You talk about like your mental health struggles and your depression. You want to talk more about those experiences and like maybe things that you've experienced so that our listeners, I like to talk a lot about, especially men, right? We're taught to like suppress our emotions, that you have to be tough, that you can't feel, that, you're weak if you feel depressed or if you feel sad. So any feelings like are a sign of weakness. And for me, as I get older and I like learn new things in life, I see that as strength. Men and women, right, that are willing to talk about their emotions and their feelings and their struggles, for me, is one of the reasons why I started this podcast. Because while I have gone through my difficult times, I've heard people's stories and their struggles and kind of taken those lessons and applied them to my life. And I feel like as men, we need more of those resources. We need more men talking about, hey, I struggle. Sometimes I wake up and I don't feel great, or there's these difficult things that, that I experience that aren't easy. So talk a little bit about your mental health struggles and like different experiences that you've had in your life, whatever you want to get into, and things that you do to like overcome and help you with that.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if it's cliche or more men don't talk about it, but I started going to therapy about 2 years ago. And I think for me, like, because everyone's going to have their opinion. I know some people go to therapy and, it doesn't do anything for them. But once I found the right therapist, just really being able to open up about like my childhood and my early years in the military, my first marriage, just going through that, it was a really important part of my healing journey. Um, and I kind of had started my own healing journey back in 2016 after my first divorce. Well, my only divorce, but yeah. So after my first marriage, there you go. I really just started to, most people when they end a marriage, they go to the bottle or drugs, whatever it may be. My oldest daughter, she was like one at that time. And I just looked at it as like, hey, I can't self destruct. She's dependent on me and it's not just about me anymore. So, I give so much credit to my daughter for, saving my life at that point. Cause I don't think if she wasn't there, again, you just never know what would have happened. But um, really, I think at that point, I just started looking at life like, hey, I'm tired of being in pain. I'm tired of, being in my own way and all these bad things happening. So really just started, looking inward and really just getting to know myself all over again. The things that I believe, I'm like, hey, why do I believe these things? Like, why are these things important to me? And really just seeing, hey, are these my own personal truths or are these the things that society, that my family, that religion programmed into us, because
Right.
that's pretty much your biggest influence in your life at such a young age is your family, right? And we grew up LDS, so Mormon. Um, and so like that was a big part of my upbringing. So 2016, I just redid it all. I was like, hey, do I believe in this church? Do I believe in these teachings? So on and so forth. And so that was the starting point. Um, but yeah, therapy, it just helped me so much, helped me put closure to, like my marriage, how it ended. Um, and really it's crazy because when you think about like your healing, overcoming your mental health issues, you you may think that, hey, like, oh, I've made peace, like this is it. But I look at healing as it's just a lifelong process. And, you know, uh, it's kind of crazy. So I was diagnosed PTSD and not just from the military, but from like childhood. So I have complex PTSD. So that's where you have multiple times in your life that you were triggered or that, something traumatic happened in your life. And it doesn't just have to be like a near death experience. It could be anything.
Right.
And then I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression. And before being diagnosed with depression, I had a depression in 2000 and I think it was 18 or 19. And that one I had to go through on my own. It was just a crazy spiral. Like nothing brought me out of it, but I went to this resilience training for the military in Wisconsin, and really, they give you these tools that just really help you take the activating event, which is like the trigger, what happened to you. So at that point, multiple things were happening to me at my job. I lost my best friend to cancer, and everything was just like back to back to back. So I was in this crazy spiral, but being able to learn the tools that they taught me there, being able to take my thoughts and be like, okay, these thoughts are a reflection of that event. These aren't your actual thoughts. And then understanding that your thoughts drive your emotions and your reactions. And at that time, I was very emotional and like even my wife, I love her so much. She's been in such a support system, but nothing was helping me. But that tool that I learned there, they call it the ACT model, that really saved my life. And whenever I got back into training, had a fight for fierce, and ended up, I think I knocked him out or I got the unanimous decision, and it was just one of the greatest feelings in my life. So that experience just taught me so many things about myself. Just kind of like you talked about before, where when you go through those tough challenges in life, you become more resilient, you become stronger, and I look at every challenge I've experienced as a lesson. It's like, hey, at that time, it didn't make sense. My divorce didn't make sense, but everything happened for a reason, and everything brought me to where I'm at today. You know, I met my amazing wife. Um, I'm at 21 years in the military. We have another daughter. And so I wouldn't be the person I am today without those experiences. I share love, I share light, I try to be that person that's there for people cuz after my divorce, I was in my apartment. And again, I know I had people that loved me, but no one was reaching out, so I just stayed in solitude, right? And that's dark.
Right. And it gets tough. There's a few things like what you said is you chose not to self destruct, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I think like anybody listening to this, like that's the biggest message is when you're going through a difficult time, you can self destruct, right? You can turn to drugs, the bottle, whatever vices you struggle with. And that's going to be the easy way, right? It'll temporarily make you feel better. The difficult thing is actually facing those things yourself, right? Like
Right.
looking inward and facing those demons and doing the work. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be a struggle, but the outcome, like the return on your investment that you get from that, from facing those difficult times and taking that hard road versus taking the easy way out, like the way you just explained, then you come in and you have this fight and then you just get into this situation where you're growing and you experience these amazing things through all these trials. So we were just talking about the struggles, but facing those struggles, facing those demons, and then there's a light at the end of the tunnel,
Yeah.
right? Taking that difficult path. A lot of men or just people in general tend to take the easy way, and I see that where they go through a difficult time and they're out drinking, doing drugs, and like you said, self-destructing. And I don't think much positive comes from that, right? You see people that end up going downhill even worse by trying to escape the pain temporarily.
Yeah.
So with that, is there anything else? You said that there was tools that the military provided. Obviously, you said you're in therapy.
Mhm.
I'm also in therapy too, and I feel like it's beneficial. Like you said, I had to go through a few therapists to kind of find one that I vibe with and I
Right.
feel like really, really helped me through like some difficult times that I was going through. And just having somebody to talk to. And I feel like my friends and my family, my support system is also always there. So I know who to call. But you said you did experience like, kind of being in your apartment and nobody's reaching out. And so you're kind of just like facing these demons alone and you feel alone. And when you feel alone, you probably pull back from everybody. So it makes it even worse,
Mhm.
right? So when you are in those situations, what steps did you take to kind of get yourself out of that to not feel alone?
And I'm gonna probably take this a little different. So um I think with mental health and speaking about it, a lot of men don't talk about it because they see it as a sign of weakness, right?
Right.
For me, when I was finally diagnosed with PTSD, it was kind of like a light came on because it helped me understand myself better and like, oh, this is why I used to retreat. It's not that people weren't there for me. It was, it's kind of like a symptom of PTSD is you pull away from people
Mm.
and you self isolate, right? You're like, hey, nobody loves me, nobody cares for me. Um, Even with like the anxiety and depression, it's just so many people look at it as like, oh, I can't tell people I have anxiety. I'm like, hey, when I first learned that I had anxiety, it's like, oh, this is why I used to do this. This is why, like, for instance, when I went to my therapist, I thought I had ADHD. I'm like, hey, I can't sit still. Like, I forget everything, this, that, the other. She's like, I don't think it's ADHD. She's like, it's anxiety. And so when I first got on anxiety medication, it was like those little things that I thought were always ADHD. It was actually from the anxiety, right? And today I can say like, I'm off all medication for anxiety, depression. Like, really what I learned from it all is I just learned to fill the empty parts from all the trauma with love and with gratitude. And I think the most important piece of my journey was I stopped trying to fill the voids, right? And the biggest realization for that, and I'm gonna get real with everyone, is like after my brother committed suicide last year, um, I got heavy on the bottle, and I think at that point, because it was 2 months, just every single day, like drowning myself, and I finally had to take a look in the mirror, and I was like, call it God, call it spirit, whatever you want to call it. I just heard his voice, and it was like, hey, I know it's not fair. I know life hasn't been easy, but this can be your life rock bottom in the bottom of this bottle, or you can pick yourself up and be an example for others. And, it's just like, I know life hasn't been fair for you, but you're strong enough to overcome this, and you can be that example for other people, for other men. And what I've learned is like sharing more about my experiences. So many men have reached out to me and thanked me for sharing my story, because it's something that a lot of men, they battle in silence, right? Just because the stigma of society or whatever it is or whatever they're feeling. And for me, it's like I love being that example of like, hey, I'm a warrior because I've been in the military, I've been deployed, I've been in combat sports 15 years, and I can still show weakness, I can still show vulnerability. But just because I show it doesn't say that doesn't mean I'm weak.
Right.
That actually means I'm strong.
Dude, the same thing I said is like the ultimate strength is doing that. Like somebody like you that's this badass in the military MMA fighter, and you being able to like share, hey, I have these difficult times, I have these feelings, I deal, with depression and all that. It just makes it so much more normal for the normal guy that just works a 9 to 5. And he's like, well, if Lehi can talk about his struggles and what he's dealing with, like you make it normal for everybody to also be able to talk about those struggles. And one thing that I feel like, we've been friends on social media for a while, and I feel like I've followed your journey, and you share a lot of your experiences on social media. And last year when your brother passed, I was going through a separation. I was going through a difficult time as well. And so I feel like we kind of connected, and I appreciate even you like still to this day sending me like positive posts, and the stuff you share online for me is like, when I see that, I'm like, yes, like seeing these men that are willing to be vulnerable and willing to share their emotions and their struggles, I feel like is like the ultimate sign that you're a badass.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And really, like that's a big part of my journey. That's a big part of my purpose is being that light that I didn't have, right? Because when you're going through it, yeah, you feel like no one cares. And I mean, it's kind of sad too, because as men, like I get it, we're busy, but saying like, hey, I'm here for you, I'm your brother, like to some people it's just like stuff they say. For me, it's like, hey, if I call you brother, I'm here for you, man. Like I don't take words lightly. So for me, it's like, I don't care who you are, man. I don't even, most of my friends on social media are strangers I've never met. And I'm better friends with them than people I've been friends with almost my entire life,
Right.
But it's just, for me, it's just like, hey, it's just showing love to everyone. That's what we need more of in this world. And, again, just showing people, hey, like, it doesn't matter that you share your feelings. Like at the end of the day, we're all human, right?
Right.
So, men, it's like, hey, it's okay to cry. It's okay to tell your brothers, hey, I love you. It's okay to like reach out and ask for help. Just all the things. I don't know if it's society or just the way men feel nowadays. I'm like, hey, let's normalize these things. There's nothing wrong with asking for help, right?
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with having feelings. There's nothing wrong with, having these struggles. And I think for the longest time, men have been told like, by your friends, your parents, uncles, all that's like all your family, everybody around you has told you, even as a little kid, hey, boys don't cry.
Right. Suck it up.
Yeah, exactly. And so you were looked down upon if you did show emotion, because it was was seen as a sign of weakness. But for me, like I said, and I said this before, is it's a sign of strength. And if anybody's listening to this and they're going through struggles, for me, you can always reach out to me. I mean, if I know you, if I don't know you, and you want to have a conversation or you want to come on this podcast or whatever it is, like I'm open, and I know Lehi's probably the same, right?
Same.
Is if it doesn't matter if you're a stranger or not, if you're dealing with some mental health issues and struggles, like just listen to like Lehi's story, and he has these experiences where, you know, it got dark and it got difficult, but there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And one thing that you mentioned is like in the moment when we're having these struggles, it seems like it's the end of the world,
Yeah.
right? You with, for example, let's use your like first or your divorce. Like at the moment, I'm sure it was difficult, and you're like, why is this happening? You know, all these things. You had your daughter involved, but now you're married, super happy with your wife and all this stuff. So you could look back now and be like, dude, I'm glad that happened.
Yeah.
I'm glad that happened that way because now I have this, right? And that's how life is. In the moment, we don't see why things happen. But if you're just willing to stick it through, take the difficult path, work on yourself, you know, work on being positive, you'll eventually get to the point where you'll look back at these situations, these difficult times, and be like, oh, okay, that makes sense now.
And just to like piggyback on that, you know, I look at my entire journey now, and everything that happened to me back in the day, I look at it as part of God's plan. You know, He knew my purpose and what I could be, and now I'm living out that purpose. You know, so I can say today, like this version of me, like I've healed my inner child, I've healed that young adult me, and now, you know, I'm at a place in my life where I'm at peace. You know, it's like I can sit back, you know, wake up, not like when you wake up, normally it's like, oh man, I got to do this, this, and this. Now I'm just like, I wake up, I'm like, hey, thank you, God. It's another day, unexpected
Gratitude.
blessings, gratitude. Like even yesterday, you reached out to me like, hey, you want to come on my podcast? And I was just at work chilling, right? So got another movie offer. So it's just the more that you allow in that gratitude and that love and that appreciation for your journey, the more that you open yourself up to even more of those experiences, right? And every day, like even going to work, I'm just like, hey, I look at it as like, hey, I teach basic leadership to the future soldiers, sergeants of America. So I go to work with purpose. You know, I go motivated. Like maybe I teach 20 students every cycle. If I can influence the life of 2 to 5 people, even one, you know, it's like, hey, I've changed the life of someone's trajectory in their life. I've made a difference. And I try to do the same thing for my community, for my daughters, you know, like I look at leadership and being a father the same. Like you got to be that example. You have to be that positive influence and give them the direction, you know, show them what right looks like, because the world is going to teach them something completely different, you know?
And for your daughters, having a father that's like, you know, healing and going through these things and facing these demons, I feel like it's going to be a huge thing for them for when they grow up and they look for a partner. They're not going to look for that toxic masculine dude, right?
Right.
They're going to look for somebody like their dad that, you know, he's an MMA fighter and he's in the military, like he's this badass dude all tatted up, but he also talks about his feelings. And once again, that's like the ultimate sign of strength for me.
Yeah. No, and I agree, man. I'm like, let's normalize that. And you're absolutely right. You know, I look at the environment with my daughters, and I'm like, hey, they see what treating a woman looks like. You know, me and my wife not fighting. You know, we have conversations, and you know, we tell each other I love you, and we kiss goodnight, and we're sitting together dinner as a family, hanging out as a family. I'm like, that's what love looks like, you know?
Right. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to touch on is you mentioned your movie, right? You were in a movie. Can you tell me how that came about and how that experience was?
So my movie career actually started, shout out to my boy Rocco Vargas. He was in the Mayans, Gilly. But yeah, he whenever I was recruiting, he walked into my office one day and he was like, I was like, oh, you're in town, you know, because I think he was working on the Mayans at the time. And I was like, what do you got going on? And he's like, oh, well, I was supposed to do this movie here, but, you know, I got to go back to LA. And then he just looks at me and he's like, hey, how tall are you? I was like 5'11". He's like, how much you weigh? 185. He's like, hey, reach out to Rob Diamond. Just tell him like, hey, Rocco sent me. If you need any help whatsoever, like, let me know. So I call Rob and you know, he gives me a part to try out for. I didn't get that, but then he was so impressed by me and just like my demeanor, I guess my nature. He was like, "Hey, we're gonna make a part for you. You're gonna be the coach of this fighter." He's like, "You're a fighter, so yeah, you'll just play as coach." Small part. The movie was called Fighting Chance, and then after that, like I started doing lessons with him, and so then I did a Power Rangers movie. I still don't know when it's gonna be released.
Power Rangers, huh?
Yeah, it was like
That's
a
cool.
Power Rangers origin. And then my last film was Shadow of Vengeance. It's on Amazon Prime. So I'm Coach Marco. I have like a good 6-7 lines.
Okay, cool. I think
Yeah.
I've seen a couple clips. I haven't seen the movie, to be honest with you, but I have seen the
Yeah.
clips that have been shared on social media, and it's cool seeing somebody that like in a movie. It's pretty interesting, which is cool how like those things just kind of those opportunities came to you.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it too has to do with you being open to those right connections and those relationships, and even this podcast, right? We probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for us having these type of conversations and kind of like sharing stuff on social media with each other. And when you're open and you're willing to like, not wear this mask and just be yourself, it opens so many doors for like these connections and relationships. And then now like, with the movies and all that stuff, I think it's like super cool. And it's a good message for everybody out there to, be your authentic self. If you having struggles, you could talk about those struggles. It doesn't make you weak. And so, yeah, I find all that stuff super interesting. Is there anything else that you have going on? You have a lot going on, right? Because we talked about the military. We talked about MMA, bare knuckle, father,
Yeah.
actor.
No, I mean, I think like this new chapter I'm in, I am towards the end of my MMA career. So I might have like, I think my last goal for MMA was to fight into my 40s. So hopefully I can get a fight this year, make that dream a reality. And definitely want to do one more for my brother, but I know I'm towards the end of my career in MMA. So I've just gotten into more like the coaching, helping the younger generation. Shout out to my boy, Darian Orban. He's defending his title tonight.
You're going to be out there?
Oh yeah. Headed there after this. So
Nice.
just that young generation, man, they're hungry. And I'm just like, hey, MMA has given me so much in my life. So for me, it's just giving back to that younger generation. But really, I'm just focused on being more present, being a dad, being a father, being a better father. And, so much of my life has been about me, my dream, my goals. And I just want to be present for my kids. Like, I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned from everything is just your time is so valuable. So for me, it's, if you're taking me away from my daughters, my wife, like, better be something important, right? Because family is the most important thing to me now. So I feel blessed to be alive, right? Shouldn't be here. But just I'm filled with gratitude every day. So if more acting opportunities come up, like obviously I would love to take advantage of that. But really I'm at this point in my life where I was just trying to give back, trying to just be that positive influence for others.
And I think that you're the perfect person too to kind of guide, whether it's MMA fighters or just everyone in general, sharing your message and sharing your story. Like, I'm sure more opportunities will come up where you can continue to share your story, because I feel like you have a super unique story. You've done so much. And even, one thing that like I like is that, you came to record the podcast and we have your daughter chilling off camera. So like she's involved. And so it just shows like where your mind is at as a father. And like, I really appreciate that. And I think like a lot of people can get a lot of benefit from your story and from seeing, the struggles that you've been through and that you've overcome.
No, I mean, like a final message I'll share with everyone. Just no matter what you're going through, and we talked about this earlier, at the time it may feel super dark, but you'll never know what's at the other end if you give up. So just know you're needed, know you're worthy. And, I just look at everything I've been able to accomplish in my life. And if I had given up, you know, pulled the trigger, whatever it was I dealt with back in the day, I wouldn't be experiencing the joy, the family, everything that I've gone through. So no matter what you're going through, don't give up. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and I appreciate this opportunity, Jason. Thank you.
No, Lehi, I appreciate you coming on and sharing this story. And that message is beautiful because, as men, like the suicide rates and all that stuff is super high for men. And so just push through it. I know it's hard, like going through those dark times, but if you work on yourself, like Lehi said, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I promise you that. One day you'll be able to look back and look at these difficult times and be like, oh, okay, like that had to happen for me to get here. That, this relationship had to end, or maybe this business failed for me to get here. I listen to a lot of entrepreneurs, and they have, several businesses that fail where they're struggling and they can't pay their bills. And then you hear like a success story. Now they're millionaires and they have successful businesses, and everything in life is like that. Everything in life, there's going to be difficult things, and you have to ask yourself, how bad do you want it? Right?
Yeah.
Like, how bad do you want to get through this? And so you have to push through and, look for that support system. It's okay to like have those difficult times, but look for that support system, whether it's therapy, religion, friends, family. Obviously be aware of like where people are coming from too, because everybody has an opinion and everybody will tell you what to do and all this.
Yep.
But if you kind of have to look and pick and choose who you're going to take advice from. But with that, do you want to share your social media for people that don't follow you, that they can follow you there?
Yeah. So I'm most active on Instagram. So it's the real Lehi Dominguez. So that's my IG handle. And if you want to follow me on Facebook, Lehi Dominguez, but I'm not as active there. It's just too many ads.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. And we'll have to I always, like I said, I'm friends with Lehi on Instagram, and he's always sharing beautiful messages. And, there's a lot of posts too that you've shared, like your dark times with your brother passing and stuff like that. And so I think like all those things are super beautiful and something that everybody should kind of get in tune with and follow his journey. And when he makes it on a huge movie, right?
We'll see.
Transformers or something.
You should never know.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. Remember to always love yourself. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel, like Lehi said, and we'll catch you on the next episode.